So today, our two community moment presenters don't really need any introduction to the Oasis community, Gary Houle and Ted Andrews. So first what we'll do is we'll have Gary Houle come up. He is going to give a State of Oasis address, if you will, kind of an update on our just annual update for the financial situation for Oasis. So with that, please help me welcome to the mic, Gary Houle.
I gave this update, I don't know, a month or two ago, but since we've come back from the pandemic, I sort of want to keep a real close eye on everything and share what's going on, and that's why I'm back here again, and everybody else that we wanted to talk before me said no, so here I am. That's all I can tell you. So this looks kind of but this is what happened, and we came back starting in July, and I have numbers now through October. As you can see, we were doing pretty well in July, but we've took kind of a negative hit in August and September, and I just kind of wanted to explain that. In order to come back and do all of our streaming services and videos, and we had to update our laptop, and I think he even got a new whatever. So we had some major expenses to get back into business here after the pandemic. And that's what hit us in August and September. Now, as you can see, last month in October, we're back in the positive, okay? And the key is, as long as we control our expenses, and we have been for a whole month now, then we're not doing too bad. So it's actually, it may look a little bit negative, but it's actually kind of good news, because we are back, and except for when we had to make some, and these were pretty much one time. It's not really one time. They'll be good for 5 or 10 years, I guess. But that's what happened, and we are functional, and we're streaming and all those good things, and so we're back in the positive. Again, I'm going to keep watching this. I don't know what's going to happen in December. Nobody does, but that's what we're going to do. Just watch it carefully so we can see what's going on. Just a quick summary of where we are, in our financial position. Yep, it does look right. We have 3 categories that we monitor here. Our general fund, which we use for everyday expenses. The building fund, we've been doing for years, trying to find some way where we're going to get down the road and have our own place and things like that. And disaster relief, somehow we've managed to not have an opportunity to help anybody in recent times, but there it is. So that's where we are financially. And then I wanted to talk just for a second about what we talk about at the board meetings, and kind of want to share. We have some plans. We're going to use a professional fundraiser either next quarter or the end of this quarter, or in Q1 22. And we did that a long time ago, as I recall. That's how we got a lot of the money we have in the building fund. And so we're going to try that again and see if we can't, outside of these meetings and the recurring donations, raise a little bit more money. We do not have any major purchases planned for first quarter of next year. So again, without those major expenses, we bring in enough money to stay in the positive and continue going. Our biggest challenge and most important one is we want to get more people back. It's a bit of a hassle, I think. A lot of people still are apprehensive about COVID. And now with Omicron poking its head up in South Africa, who knows, it could swing back the other way again. So I understand a lot of people not wanting to just come and join all our festivities here, and until we can get past that. And our last guess, which was the day before, or 2 days before Omicron appeared, was that by second quarter, people should sort of, start filtering back in. But who knows now? And so we could not see anything come of that, or it could just bring us all the way back to quarantine. Who knows? But we want to try to get some higher level speakers, to get people to come in here and see what we're all about, and then keep coming because they liked what they saw. That's, kind of where we're going. And then we have this other thing that's happening. It's with Humanist of Houston. They also are a nonprofit, 501c3, but they want to get out of the nonprofit business. They want to continue to exist as an organization, but they no longer want to be a 501c3. When a nonprofit does that, they're legally required to give their funds to another nonprofit. And they looked around the entire earth, I'll tell you, and said, Houston Oasis, that's the best, that's where we're going to go. And so in the very near future, maybe before the end of the year, the funds they have on hand are going to be donated to us. So we're, just like the rest of the country, we are consolidating. We're going to, bypass all of the, merging the big firms together here. Forget what do they call that when the big firms merge? I forgot what I'm sorry? Yeah, merger. What's a merger? But I forgot what anyway, they have, antitrust. Yeah, we're going to skip the antitrust things. So, and just go for it kind of a thing. So, anyway, and that's kind of all I wanted to say, but unlike most, I get the opportunity to let people ask questions. Since we're talking about money, some people might want to know.
You mentioned the idea of bringing in one of these big name speakers and stuff like that. Is there such a thing as an average amount or a range of how much that costs?
Could I get the last 4 words again?
Roughly how much does it cost to get a big name speaker in?
No. Well, of course it varies. Now, I've been looking into some guy named Barack Obama, but he's really up there, and we're probably not going to make that happen. Now, seriously, we've had, I think the most I've seen us spend is about $2,500. I don't know if that was Seth Andrews or somebody like that, and he filled the place. As a general rule, we have our hat back there, and people put money in it and stuff like that. But generally, when we bring in a speaker, we do not get enough in the hat to pay for that speaker. So it's sort of a losing proposition, or you can look at it as an investment, because again, we're hoping that people will come because they like whoever is speaking, and they'll say, oh, this is pretty good, we'll hang around and come back. So that's, that's the long-term view, is that we can just get people to see, hey, this is a pretty cool place, people that, like us, and we'll continue to come back. And then we can, move from hat donations into recurring donors, and there you are. So I don't know. I mean, I have to look at the speakers committee, but that's, kind of right now that's been an upper limit, about $2,500 to fill the place. But I think we could do, some that are less than that.
Yeah, I think I was first, Jeff. You can be second.
No need to fight.
I noticed you didn't give a breakdown of monthly expenses. Where can we go and see this? In other words, we have rent here, I believe, and we have other minor expenses. And also, for everyone's here, I would like you to know that this is an all-volunteer organization, including coffee. So every now and then, check with me or check with Kevin or someone and say, do we need any coffee? And we appreciate people who will buy a little container, not little, but a big container of coffee and bring it in. But back to the monthly expenses, is there a breakdown anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I am using QuickBooks, and I have the monthly reports. That's where these numbers came from. I've tried to, I was bringing some reports here, so if somebody had, a desire to see them, they could just come on over and look at them, but nobody ever has. So I haven't worried about it too much, but I can put them out on our Google Drive. There is a place out there for our finances and stuff like that. I find people have a hard time getting through that. I mean, it's like, okay, I got to go to Google and get on their Drive and all these other things. So I was just trying to have it readily available for anybody who wants to look at it. I mean, it's a breakdown of complete detail, both of our expenses and our income stuff, so.
Yeah, I'd like to see.
Okay, can do.
Make sure nothing's slipping out.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
Note to
Very
self. No, go ahead.
excited to mention that I have a real good tune for that professional day. It's called, and the name of this place is Oasis, and it's set up like I did I Am a Nun, you know, with the pre-recorded accompaniment. And I'm just waiting for a really cool time to do it. So sign me up if you can for that.
All right,
When you know, have any idea when that will be?
I'm sorry, your mask is really kind of muffling.
Do you have any idea when that will be, the professional growth thing?
Now we're still looking at, she was going to do something about Giving Tuesday, but that just was too soon. So either December, you know, before Christmas, or it could be sometime in Q1 of next year. So we haven't got an exact date yet to work it, so.
One wanted to be a recurring donor, just like say for me, I would do like $20 a month. Is there a way, is there somewhere on the website where I can go either my bank information or my debit card information and say, like on the 15th of every month, take $20? Is there a way to do that where it's automatic and I don't have to like remember to do this or do that? It's just go ahead and take care of, get that set up, and I could stop at any time if I run into financial
Yes,
difficulties.
That's right. If you go to our website, I mean, first of all, people usually come back there and they ask me about it, and I get their financial information and I set it up for them. But you can go to our website and make a donation, and you'll see on there an option to make it recurring. And you can just, you know, follow the prompts from there, and you're all set up. So you can certainly do it yourself. Anybody else? So, all right then, thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and go straight into our community moment. Like I said, our next community moment is well known to the Oasis community, so please help me welcome to the mic, Ted Andrews.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Ted Andrews, and my community moment will be on backyard composting. And I assume that this large audience is attributed to interest in backyard composting, so that's great. I've been composting for about 20 years, and it's fascinating to me and extremely satisfying. But you might find it fascinating if you consider that it really is a form of alchemy, probably the closest thing we have to it, where we take stinky garden or stinky kitchen waste and turn it into sweet-smelling soil that makes our garden to jump with delight. It really is a fascinating process to see. Now, when my family moved to Houston about 20 years ago, I had no idea about gardening or composting or mulching. Couldn't have told you the difference between any of those three. But we bought a house, and the house came with your typical ugly Houston wooden fence, which I still think are the ugliest things in creation, and I wanted to cover that with a hedge. And most people in Houston, it's very common to plant a red tip photinia, which is the hedge, a green hedge that you see all over the place. But that's an invasive plant. It's boring. There's no fruit. You know, I mean, the more I looked into that, I said, you know, it may be easy to deal with, but it's really boring. So we started planting all kinds of tropical plants, papayas, kumquats, fruit trees, a lot of stuff. And not surprisingly, we eventually wound up with a jungle. That's what my mother called it. And we loved it. At least me and my two boys did. My wife was a little less enthusiastic about it, but this, not surprisingly, would generate a lot of yard waste. And in my innocence and ignorance, I just would pile that up against the ugly wooden fence because I knew that eventually it would decompose, and that was correct, of course. It will decompose, but it will take years for that to happen. And pretty soon my wife brought that to my attention, so me and my two boys went in the back and built 3 4x4x4 compost bins out of 2x4 with chicken wire. And it's been amazing how efficient a good compost system works. There's the compost bins. Here on the left, you can see the soil, really, that's created from just leaves and kitchen waste and whatever else you pretty well throw into there. It's super stuff. I was going to bring some. I should have, but I didn't. And in fact, that stuff looks so nice that on a dare once, my brother ate some of my compost, and I consider that the highest compliment for my compost. You can basically consider composting styles that vary on a spectrum from basically cold composting, which I was doing unknowingly by piling up indiscriminately waste against the fence. That will decompose. It'll take forever, and it won't build up any heat like you often hear about composting piles. Or you can pay attention to the details, which is really kind of fun to do, at least initially, where you're shredding all your stuff. You pay attention to your carbon to nitrogen mix, and you turn your pile on a regular basis so you get oxygen going through your compost pile, and you get because you do want to have aerobic decomposition. If you have anaerobic, in other words, you don't have enough oxygen going through there, then your compost pile will start to smell bad. So over the years, like I say, I actually was doing hot composting and really loving it because it's really cool to see your compost pile steam up and see how hot. You got a thermometer, and I got it over 190 degrees, and me and a neighbor were competing and stuff, and it's a lot of fun, but it really is a lot of work to do that. And you don't have to do that because Mother Nature will take care of it with a lot less of your effort to do that. So I'm somewhere in there between cold and hot now, and that's plenty good. There's really 5 essential ingredients for composting. You have to have every one of them for it to work. You need, of course, the microorganisms that do the work, bacteria and fungi and whatever. And then you need the materials. You need carbon-rich materials, which are composters refer to as brown leaves, whatever. And then you've got nitrogen-rich stuff, which you've got your kitchen waste, or even green leaves. Green leaves initially start with nitrogen, and if you leave them out there and they go dry, then the nitrogen has escaped and they become carbon type. You need oxygen, and you need water. Now, you don't really have to worry about water as a composter in Houston because we get enough rain that takes care of itself. And I just add shredding on there because shredding will do wonders for speeding up your composting. The idea is that by creating more surface area for these bugs to attack, it speeds things up quite a bit. So that really helps a lot. A little more on the carbon-nitrogen ratio. Ideally, the microorganisms like to have 30-to-1 units of, like 30 units of carbon to 1 unit of nitrogen. But as you can imagine, not many things have 30-to-1. And so in the end, you just kind of look for something that will balance out to roughly 30-to-1. And these are some common carbon to nitrogen ratios. Alfalfa is very high in nitrogen, and when you're doing hot composting, that's a fun little ingredient because as you're layer caking, I guess Andy was wanting to hear about layers. You can do layers, you're composting with layers, and if you dust a little bit of alfalfa in the layers about every 6 inches, you will have a hot compost pile. And you can go all the way up. You see fruit and vegetable wastes are just about perfect at 35-to-1. That's really 30-to-1 is the ideal. So And all the way up to wood. That is basically very difficult to compost, 600 to 1. And when I started, of course, I was an extremist. I didn't want anything going to the front curb. I was going to compost absolutely everything, including the untreated wood of my compost bin. That was my goal, total. But, so I would cut up wood, trunks and everything. I would cut them up and stack them in my backyard. And after about 8 years, I got the first batch composted, and I decided, you know, I think I'll take that to the front curb. It just takes too long to compost wood in a residence. It's not so difficult, really, to balance your carbon to nitrogen mix. There's a couple rules of thumb, but basically the rule of thumb of 3 parts by volume, 3 parts of brown materials to 1 part green, and just eyeballing it is plenty good enough for Mother Nature. She will work with that. Size matters, yes. Basically, when you're building a compost bin, you don't want it too small because you do have to have enough insulation. It has to be big enough so that it will build up heat. Because the hotter that you have this, the faster the decomposition up to a certain point. And if you get it too big, like much bigger than 4 by 4, then of course the bigger you get it, the less air you're going to have going through there. And then you will have anaerobic decomposition, which, you know, that's the classic nightmare of the composter, to have his compost bin smell like a swamp or worse. And this was one thing I really screwed up at the beginning, and it's got a very simple solution to it, which is you get your compost bin and you have your compost materials, your mulch and stuff, your materials in the bin, and once every day or two you'll go out and throw in your garden waste, and then you go back into the kitchen and repeat it, you know. Well, if you do it that way, you will pretty soon have a fly factory. You will have maggots flying all over your compost pile, and it's not very pleasant. And it's very simple to resolve. You just get a pitchfork, dig a hole in your mulch, your compost bin, and then you put in your waste and bury it, and that's it. Really, I think failure to do this, probably the anaerobic decomposition is what gives compost piles such a bad name. And I can tell you really that in the 20 years, we have never had any rodent problems. We've never had any smell problems. It's been totally without problems. Now, besides what you put into your compost pile, it's what you don't put into your compost pile. I think we all know that we wouldn't put meat into a compost pile because then you'd have bears and whatever else. Oil, fat, or grease, or dairy products. And you also don't put anything into your compost pile that you don't want spread all around your yard. That includes diseased plants. If you have a diseased plant, then you'll want to throw it away. And if you have weeds, especially if you have one that's really giving you a problem and you say, I'll just take all these weeds and compost them. Well, you can compost them. And actually, that's one advantage of getting your compost pile up to a super high heat, 190 degrees. That'll kill most seeds and bugs and whatever. But you're probably not going to do hot composting. And so if you're not going to do that, then either you'd remove the seed pods and you could compost the plant, or just throw the whole thing away. Dog or cat feces, we don't have a dog or a cat, so that hasn't been an issue. We do have raccoons and possums walking through, and I will just collect that and put it into the corners of the house. I mean, the corners, not the house, the fence in the backyard, and just get rid of it. But in theory, you could compost, some amounts of cat and dog feces, but you wouldn't want to put it into a vegetable garden. Obviously, there's parasites and diseases and whatever, so it kind of depends. I guess if you had a dog, you might do some experimenting and try it and put the mulch around your trees if you wanted and you weren't growing vegetables. That might be okay. But this is the good news, really. You can hear all of these facts and factoids and stuff about how to mulch and stuff, but if you just take care of the basics, you're going to come up with usable compost, and you don't have to be, you can be close is good enough. You will have good compost. yeah, so why would we compost? Well, like it says there, it's estimated that about 20% of residential waste is yard waste, and that actually seems kind of low to me, but even so, that's a lot of waste. So by composting, what you're doing is you're not sending you're not sending your yard waste to the local landfill. And when it goes to the local landfill, it's going to be buried under dirt. It's going to start undergoing anaerobic decomposition, which will start generating methane. And obviously that's a greenhouse gas. We want to avoid that. And not to mention the fact that, you know, I mean, who likes to have landfills spreading all over our neighborhoods and whatever. So, I mean, keeping this yard waste out of the landfill is a big deal. That's the main reason why we would do it. And of course, the other big deal is you're practicing alchemy, so you have a product that just makes your garden jump with joy. When you put that in there, it's amazing how the papayas in my backyard respond to the mulch. You can see, you know, some years you'll see, wow, what happened to that one there? And then we remember, oh yeah, you know, we put that compost on there, and they grow big and fat, and they just eat it up. And this one is for Andy and Sarah. They said they needed a method for composting. They live in an apartment. They don't have enough room for a compost bin. And even my brother Richard, I hope he does it. I think he will, just because he's that kind of guy. But worm composting, I have never done it, but it's a very well-known process, and it's on the internet, I mean, all over the place, where you would order worms. These are not earthworms. These are red worms. They're what would we say, designed or chosen for this this process that they use. And you can buy these boxes, and basically they're in the top box, the top shelf of the box, you would put your garden waste and your red worms, and they will eat, and they'll pass their worm castings, which are super, super fertile for your plants, and then it will drop down to the bottom shelf, and you'll collect that. And supposedly, like I say, I've never done it myself, but if you do it right, just like a compost pile, it will not smell, it won't be a problem, and it should be super. So if you just have an apartment, and it also will, yes, will. I mean, there's a lot of, what would we say, targets for vermiculture here in the audience, so you might consider that. And I would love to hear your experiences. Okay. That's another thing. As you've got your compost bin working away there, and your garden, your kitchen waste go into there, a lot of times there's going to be fruit seeds or vegetable seeds or whatever here. You probably can't see really well, but on the left that's a passion fruit vine growing there, and then on the right it happens to be a ginger, but it could as easily be corn. Or these are really, if you really want to get into it, they'd be the things that you'd want to get. You do want to get a shredder. That yellow object in the back is a small electric shredder, very efficient. It can't really do big branches, but it can do easily little branches like your finger in width, and it really loves to eat up leaves. And so that'll take a big pile of leaves and shred them into a much smaller, easy, more handy package. Machete, or I've actually gone from using a machete to just a spade to cut up the stuff that you put into the pile. A pitchfork, you know, the first thing I was thinking, you know, why do I want a pitchfork? You know, I'm in a residence outside, you know, I'm not on a farm or anything, but once you use a pitchfork in a mulch or a mulch pile, you'll see that there's nothing like it. You definitely want a pitchfork if you're dealing with a big compost pile. A thermometer, you know, if you're into it as a competitive sport, which I was for a while, and it was a blast, really it was, you'll want to get a thermometer. And even really when you first put stuff, even if you're not doing things for competitive mulching, so to speak, or composting, you still might want to get a thermometer, because it will almost always heat up at the beginning when you first get your compost pile started, even if you're only doing it kind of halfway. Of course, a stainless steel compost pail with a filter is a nice thing to have, with a top on it too. If you don't have a little top on your pail in your kitchen, you're likely to start breeding fruit flies. We've had that happen once. where we just had the whole kitchen infested with fruit flies, just because we weren't putting the top on there. But no smells whatsoever from that deal there. But of course, we take that out every day or two. We don't leave it hanging around very long. Alfalfa Meal, if you want to kick it into high gear, then that's the high nitrogen little deal you can dust on as you're making a layer cake of your compost pile. And the sieve, if you want to get super high quality compost, which I don't do that much anymore, you take your compost and sieve, and you get some really smooth, beautiful compost. That might have been the stuff that Richard ate. I'm not sure. Your thermometer. Yeah, that's your standard little kitchen pail. We got that at Costco with the carbon filter, and it works great. If anyone needs any help, you can buy compost bins ready-made. You can buy, I guess Andy and Sarah have one that they rotate. Those are nice little small ones and stuff. Or you can build one. We built, like the ones we've got are really effective. They're a little more expensive maybe than some people would want to spend. Some people use pallets. I think my neighbor has used pallets to put his compost bin. It doesn't have to be fancy. And references, well, that's about everything I have on backyard composting. So, thank you.
Someone else. Thank you all very much. Have a lovely morning.